It's time once again for What You Readin'. Frequent question I get is, what are you reading, Chuck? What comics or books are you reading when you're not writing? And here's some of my latest selections. I picked up this, Judge Dredd, the complete Brendan McCarthy. It's every Brendan McCarthy illustrated Judge Dredd story. Up to date. Hopefully Mr. McCarthy will someday return and do some more Dredd, because I love his stuff. He was one of the seminal Dredd creators. Initially, when he was hired early on and told to ape either Brian Bolland or Carlos Esquera. He was a young kid with a dream, wanted to get into comics, so he aped as best he could. But and then he left 2000 AD for a while, worked on other projects, and returned. And when he returned, he had developed his own bravura comic book drawing style. In addition to that, he drew his own version of Dredd's helmet. I don't think any other artist adopted this version of Dredd's helmet. And I assume that 2000 AD editors were like, well, it's not exactly on model, but it looks so damn cool when he draws it. We're going to let him get away with it. That's what I would imagine happened the first time he handed in work with this new look. And McCarthy's such a perfect fit for 2000 AD because, for my money, 2000 AD throws out more ideas, more concepts, more crazy stuff on a page than any other comic ever. And particularly Judge Dredd. The Judge Dredd series is just rife with fabulous ideas. And luckily for all of us, most of Mr. McCarthy's stories were written by John Wagner and Alan Grant, the team supreme on Judge Dredd. Without question, wrote the best Dredd stories of them all. John Wagner continues to write Dredd and continues to do wonderful work on it. But McCarthy's style was, just terrific. It wasn't like any of the other 2000 AD artists, although he has his imitators now in guys like Henry Flint and a couple of other guys whose names I can't recall. But very influential. Like I said, a seminal Dredd artist who's just, his use of imagery, his ability to draw violence is unbelievable. His ability to draw just gruesome stuff, and then tastefully color it in psychedelic, with the psychedelic palette to sort of remove you from the awfulness of what he's drawn, if that makes any sense. I assume that was a conscious effort on his part, or perhaps the folks at 2000 AD said, hey, you got to do something to cover this up. This is nauseatingly nasty. But he's an excellent storyteller, excellent graphic designer. Brendan McCarthy co-wrote and did almost all of the design work on the Mad Max movie Fury Road. And if you watch the movie, it's not a big surprise, because this guy really is amazing with the design stuff. One of the coolest things, and some of the stories in this are fantastic. So a lot of them I had never read. I think they appeared in Judge Dredd annuals or yearbooks, things that generally didn't make it to the United States. And one of the coolest things is in the back, he does Dredd as interpreted, as it might have been interpreted by different artists. And obviously here he is doing his best Kirby, which is very cool, and Judge Dredd as imagined by Ditko. So just full of cool stuff. It's a big fat volume. I don't know even if it's available. I know IDW published it in addition to the British publishers. But if you can find it and you're a Dredd fan, you can't do much better. This is just great stuff. And also it reminded me, because I've been reading some current Dredd stuff, it reminded me again of, how great the classic older Dredd things were, because they really were workable police procedural mysteries. Even though they were making up technology, in a lot of cases, making up technology back in the 80s and 90s that is actually used by the police today. They were sort of, as any good science fiction writer does, they look at where science is going and try to extrapolate. And but terrific, tightly plotted, organically motivated, organically moving, and briskly paced crime stories, because they aren't just. I mean, Dredd is not just some sci-fi fantasy. It's a grim crime drama with a tinge, sometimes heavier than other times, of social satire, and McCarthy was such a great fit for this character. I read another book called Is This Tomorrow from 1947, an unapologetic anti-communist propaganda comic book. It's a little pamphlet comic book that I imagine was available on newsstands, possibly ordered in bulk and given away by certain anti-communist organizations, published in 1947. And it was a warning of what America would be like under communism and what to look out for. And it's pretty standard comic book stuff for the period. Obviously produced by comic book people. The lettering, everything else looks in period for 1947. But the book is, wherever you fall on communism, you read it and it is pure propaganda. And I'm sure a lot of people look at it like they would look at Reefer Madness. Isn't that funny? Isn't it quaint? But the book still seems relevant because it warns that the communists might take over the education system. Hey, how could that ever happen? That's crazy. Or the communists would use racial tensions. They would seek to create racial tension in order to create the kind of chaos that they would need in order to take over. And also move against religion, because communism is an atheistic theology. It is a religion itself. It is a religion without God. And here in the comic, we see they are burning Bibles. So, think what you want about communism. Maybe you're an anti-communist. Maybe you're a communist yourself. But you got to admit, you can't deny, this is the communist playbook. And this comic book lays it out very, very clearly. Now, the big shocker, the big surprise, the big reveal is it was drawn by Charles Schulz. It was drawn by Sparky here, the man who created Peanuts. Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Lucy, Linus, the whole gang. Because Charles Schulz didn't like commies. So it wasn't like he was just hired on, work for hire, it was a paycheck. Charles Schulz was a rather conservative dude. So, and it's interesting to see him doing what might have been a style very welcome at Marvel or DC at the time. So, pretty interesting, huh? Hey, I got a new Conan book coming out, or is out. I know it hasn't been announced yet as I'm recording this, but really, really hoping it's been announced. In the meantime, it's Caravan of the Damned, and it's from our good friends at Arkhaven Comics. It is the second of the 3 Conan novels I've written so far. I'm toying around with the plot for a 4th one, and it features Conan with the Desert Wolves out in the Zuagir, and it involves a hostage princess and some surprise supernatural elements at the end of the story, and a chase across the desert. It is largely a chase story across a hostile environment with really, really nasty guys chasing Conan and his band of desert wolves. So maybe you might want to check that out. So anyway, that's what I've been writing, and I told you what I've been reading. So I'll see you next week. I hope to see all of you down the road.